Hello everybody, I'm Silif. This will be the one-shot entitled Miles Length But Keeping You Close, written by me and its_Kingston. Summary. Shinso had never really been one for friends, romance, or anything in between. However, with the arrival of the sports festival comes a green-haired boy, his smile unafraid even when faced with Shinso and his quirk. Once the sports festival had ended, Shinso thought his interactions with the boy would as well, but he seemed to be seeing the freckled teen more often than expected. Shinso had never really been one for friends, romance, or anything in between. After all, growing up with villain's quirk tends to push people away and condition a person to not grow accustomed to others' presence, being a constant thing. Even when Hitoshi got to UA, he kept the same mindset. Don't let people get close, and nothing can happen. Back in junior high, he had made that mistake and allowed himself to make friends. The only thing it did, though, was lead him to almost getting arrested after his so-called friends accused the purple-haired teen of forcing them to steal things. When that alibi was given to the police, they just took it without question and brought Shinso in. However, one look at the footage found them completely untouched by the teen's quirk, and he was let free. Let's just say, after almost having his chance at UA being taken away from him by a mark on his record from a crime he didn't commit, pushed him to keep people at arm's or miles length. Throughout his days at UA, Hitoshi followed this mindset, not talking to people, and if people talked to him, pushed them away. Pushing people away kept bad things from happening after all. Shinso knew that, logically, people that were trying to become heroes wouldn't try to bring him down or get him arrested, but he didn't want to take chances. When he fought Midoriya in the sports festival, his reality seemed to tilt on its side, and his logic didn't seem to make sense anymore. The Greenette had taken his harsh words, the harsh words Shinso had only said out of pure desperation and panic of losing and once again letting the hero course slip away, and still chose to help him up after the fight was over. Hitoshi looked up at the reached out and slightly shaking hand, one purple finger attached to the limb, and paused. Midoriya was looking over him, not with scorn, but with something far more gentle. Why was he trying to help him up? The indigo-haired teen huffed out a breath and stood up, ignoring the held-out hand of the other boy. He also had to ignore the pain that laced his spine as he stood. Being slammed into a concrete ground fucking hurt. "Are you okay?" Izuku asked. His hand lingered for a moment, even as Hitoshi stood, as though the other teen was ready to steady him if necessary. Midoriya's hand returned to his side when Shinso was on his feet again. Typical, no one wants to touch a villain. He was probably just trying to help him and be nice because there were cameras around. Hitoshi just scoffed, subtly rubbing his back as he looked away. "I'm fine." The shorter teen looked at him for a moment, his eyes tracking across him like they so often did when he analyzed heroes, before giving a small nod. "All right, just make sure to go to Recovery Girl if your back's bothering you." With that, Midoriya had walked away and back through the tunnel that he came from, leaving Hitoshi with one thought. He noticed. Did he actually care? The teen shook his head, looking away to his own tunnel before taking Izuku's suggestion and going through it to look for UA's nurse. Shinso blamed this day for the change he felt. Sleepless nights, once loathsome, felt warmer as he tossed beneath the covers, thoughts of Izuku's smile playing through his head. When he smiled at Hitoshi, there was no pity. Besides, his eyes were crinkled, something the purple-haired teen hardly ever saw, especially when directed at him. Izuku smiled at him like no other had. Shinso wanted so badly to believe it hadn't just been a show on the Greenette's part, that his kindness wasn't some act. But it was hard when you weren't used to the kindness of others. Due to this, he often came off as rude or aloof to Midoriya. The latter never appeared to mind, though, as it seemed that every lunch period, Izuku could sniff out the hiding spots that the messy-haired teen ate in order to avoid people. Not only that, but he would make an effort to talk to him and stay near Hitoshi. Furthermore, Midoriya would always find a way to say goodbye to him when the school day ended, even if that meant the Greenette was left waiting by the gate. It was strange, sure. Hitoshi was used to people ignoring him or being rude, but he was starting to sort of look forward to the green-haired boy's presence. Every day, Midoriya seemed so happy, and every day it seemed to bring a small smile to Shinso's face as well. Not that he would ever admit it. It was just small gestures mostly, not like how Izuku was with his other friends. With his closer friends, Midoriya would be loud, joke around more, and get closer with them. But with Hitoshi, the Greenette still didn't know what he could and could not do. After all, they weren't well acquainted yet. The waters were still being tested, in other words, and Hitoshi was just fine with it if he was being completely honest. The teen still wasn't used to others being, let alone wanting to be friends with him. That's what he could call this, right? Hitoshi shook his head to rid the thoughts of the past week or so and pushed open the door to his new homeroom. The sight that greeted him was honestly what he'd expect from 1A, loud and chaotic. The loud blonde boy that won the sports festival, Bakugo Katsuki if Shinso could remember his name right, was all but yelling to communicate with the two other guys at his seat. Bakugo's feet were kicked up onto the desk, his hands resting in his pants pockets. If Hitoshi had to guess, he didn't really care for rules all too much, considering how he carried himself and the definitely not up-to-dress code uniform. One of the boys that was next to his desk had electric yellow hair and eyes, while the other had spiky red hair. Shinso might think that they were his friends, if not for the fact that Bakugo was yelling at them. Sighing and trying to ignore the oncoming headache he could sense he was getting, Shinso made his way to seat 19, the seat he and Aizawa had discussed he would sit in once he got to class, while ignoring the other mingling students. He sat down in the hard seat and placed his bag down next to him, allowing his body to slide down a bit so that he was all but slouched into it. The purple-haired teen was about to just lay his head down to catch up on some much-needed rest that he hadn't gotten the night before, due to a certain green-haired boy, when a cheery voice called out to him. "Shinso-kun," Izuku said. The radiancy of his smile was rivaled by only that of the sun as he approached the purple-haired teen's desk. Speak of the devil. "Morning," Hitoshi replied, sitting back up in his seat, if only to convey that he wasn't in a bad mood. If anything, he appreciated Izuku's presence, welcomed it. Midoriya, as if fueled by the little smile Hitoshi gave him, brightened. Shinso wondered how it was possible for a person to glow like Izuku did. He thought, fleetingly, as he resisted the urge to squint, that the Greenette's quirk might not be strength, but this warm, glowing feeling that he passed to Hitoshi. The green-haired teen sat backwards in the chair right in front of Shinso, placing his bright yellow bag on the floor next to his desk. "I'm glad your papers finally went through. It seems like they were taking forever to get to Nezu," Izuku said. "I had to do an aptitude test first, that's why." Izuku hummed, leaning back in his seat a bit, arms folded on the top of the back of the chair. "How'd you do?" Shinso shrugged, tilting his head ever so slightly to one side. "I think I did good," he said, his tone almost questioning. He repressed a wince at the tone, opening his mouth to correct himself to anything closer to his statement, but Izuku reacted quicker. Midoriya's smile dimmed a bit as he leaned back forward, and this time, closer to Shinso, and the latter felt his heart in his ears. "I know you did well, Shinso. Don't sell yourself short." Relaxation fell over him almost immediately, yet the thrumming in his ears didn't stop. The purple-haired teen's eyes flicked between the greenettes, never staying on one of them for too long before he eventually gave a small nod. His face and neck suddenly felt tingly. That was one thing he liked about Midoriya. He never said anything bad about Hitoshi, and furthermore, never let anyone say anything remotely bad about Shinso, even if he said it about himself. Whenever the other teen did that, it always made Shinso's chest tighten and his stomach do a small flip. The brainwashing kid didn't exactly know why it did that, but he didn't mind the feeling at all. "Hey, by the way," Izuku spoke up, breaking Hitoshi's train of thought, causing said boy to focus back in on the greenette. "Gainorca is opening this new exhibit this weekend, an aquarium. The boy paused, words trailing off as he looked down at his own fidgeting hands. Would you want to go with me? Shinso paused at the question, his mouth dry. Why was Izuku inviting him along? Were there other classmates going? Wouldn't Izuku have mentioned that? Shinso swallowed at his poor attempt at regaining his wits and spoke. Just make sure I'm understanding this right. You and I are going. No one else is going? Hitoshi said. Izuku hesitated for a moment, but nodded once he seemed to make up his mind. Just me and you, yeah, he said. Izuku's smile softened to something so sickeningly sweet that Hitoshi gritted his teeth in order to not return his own smile. You can just ask next time. No need for all the statements. Hitoshi blinked, mouth pressing into a thin line. It's a habit. I don't want to make anyone think I'm trying to use my quirk on them. I don't think you would use it on me without a good reason, Izuku said quickly, reflexively. Hitoshi wasn't sure how to reply for a moment, wasn't sure how to calm his racing heart or the tingling that webbed across his skin. Shinso took a breath, lowering his voice so as to not be overheard by his classmates. Sure. What's got you so excited about it? Midoriya beamed at him, all previous signs of nervousness completely gone. He's doing signings for the opening, and I've been meaning to get his for a while now. I haven't yet, though, because he's really hard to find, especially with all the other jobs he does. Did you know? As Izuku dissolved into ramblings about the hero, Hitoshi stayed silent, a small smile on his lips, content to just listen to his friend. Midoriya's mutterings were long, sure, but he liked listening to them, even if he couldn't understand when some words lapped over the others like one big mess. It didn't matter to the purple-haired teen. After all, listening to the other gave him almost a docile feeling, like just listening to the greenette was something he was made to do. Maybe letting people close, maybe letting Izuku close, isn't such a bad thing. After all, if there was one person he would want to keep like this, it would be the freckled teen in front of him. Alright everybody, that concludes the one-shot entitled Miles Length by Keeping You Close. Please make sure to check out the Discord if you haven't already. If you would like to get updates easier, get connected with people within the fanfiction community, make requests for a podfic, and more. The link to the server will be in the description. Now I hope you enjoyed, happy Valentine's Day, and thank you for listening.